Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV Channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me as usual is the one and only Aaron William Freeland, and we're doing not CFL talk. We're doing Candid Frank live, just to straighten things out a little bit. We were talking football, so I had football on the brain, thank goodness. So, well, we'll start with that. And you're right. While we are going off air, Montreal, we talked about Montreal on Friday because the game was on Thursday. They lost to Winnipeg 35-20. So we talked about that one. We can talk about the next game, and that, of course, is the Toronto Argonauts and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. It was a game that 14 points were scored at the end of the game, at the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, whatever it was, maybe three. This was a game that the Argos were sleepwalking, and the Ticats looked like they had things figured out, and they were on their way to another victory. And once again, Aaron, they implode in the second half and late in the game.
It was unbelievable. I mean, the Argonauts were down 14-6 at the half, and it was not looking good for our Warriors in double blue. But then they come up and put out 28 points in the second half, and Hamilton's limited to just 6. I mean, that was just a little bit nutty. I don't think any of us in the crowd expected a finish quite like that. There seemed to be also a lot of injuries on the Hamilton end. Almost every single kickoff. I'm not sure what it was.
Every kickoff, every pass, it seemed every time they went to do something, there'd be a guy lying on the ground. And we're not talking about a player laying on the ground and then they come over to him, how are you? Gets up. And we're talking down for about 5-8 minutes minimum. They were down for the count. Now, usually with humidity, cramps become an issue. But the dealing with cramps is clearly dealing with cramps. You can tell when the cramping is a problem. None of that was about cramps. And in fact, even worse, I think it was Acklin who something happened to his ankle, and he's out for a while now. And people were very disappointed, in the fact that he was anyway. And I think his fans and anybody who's a fan of Acklin's disappointed in how he went out.
No, most definitely. And again, it was one of those things where if it weren't for the real physical toll it was taking on the guys on the field, would have been almost laughable. He almost got to that point where it's just like, oh, here we go again. So
yeah, absolutely. And the game went well. Defensively again, special teams, not so much. But then the offense did some stuff. And the turning point for me, the Toronto Sports Network turning point. Okay, it's not Toronto Sports Network, it's the Sports Network. But many people think it is the Toronto Sports Network. When McLeod Bethel Thompson, was about to be wrapped up and sunk just outside the Hamilton end zone, he spun around and did what I have not seen him do in a while. I mean, Aaron, were you as surprised as I that he got away? Because I know on the sidelines, the defense was out there. They're going, holy mackerel, look what he just did.
Yeah, MBT's never really struck me as being that fleet of foot, but the fact that he managed to scramble out of the pocket to save himself was kind of neat to see. Certainly got the fans in our section charged up.
That's essentially in the last two games. Well, in the first half of this last game against Hamilton and the whole game against Ottawa, the difference was not the pressure on the quarterbacks, being the Ottawa quarterback Evans and, of course, McLeod Bethel Thompson. It was the elusivity of Evans that was the difference. And unfortunately, against Ottawa, there were a lot of sacks that it seemed that, McLeod was getting buried under too easily. For those of us in the stands, it looks, it's really easy for me to criticize a quarterback for not, getting out of the way of defenders. But the fact is, in this game, that one move, and then it seemed every play after that play for the Argos, whether it was a defensive play or an offensive play, worked out for them.
And it was amazing how everything just sort of fell together for them at the last minute like that. But we can't rely on that in future. We've got to make sure that we get ourselves out to a lead and keep it, as opposed to finding it right at the end of the game.
So the Argos win 34-20 over Hamilton. And here's the deal. If you did not go to the game, you do not know how insane it was to get around the exhibition, Ontario Place, uh, Lake Shore, British Columbia Avenue, Saskatchewan Avenue. All those roads around the exhibition were toast. They did not exist. I drove around an hour after I got onto Lakeshore and British Columbia Road. It was terrible. But you know what? Apparently, there was some exciting stuff going on. There was a lot of eye candy apparently everywhere, whether it be boys or girls. A little nubile festival going on, and as well, of course, OVO was happening, and that is, of course, Drake's concert that was postponed due to COVID.
Exactly. So Saturday at 7 p.m. was the makeup date. Artists like Lil Wayne and Nicki Minaj were there with Drake for that last part. It was called the Young Money Reunion. At the same time that an EDM fest was going on in another part of the Toronto, the Ontario grounds place. Add into that Lady Gaga at Skydome, and you know the Blue Jays playing earlier in the afternoon, and traffic straggling home from that, and the Argos, and it was the perfect storm for sitting in lots of traffic.
Oh my goodness, was it lots of traffic? And you couldn't, if you lived north of the exhibition, they wouldn't let you out. You had to go along the Gardiner, which I had to do. It was terrible. But I got to tell you, it reminds one of why Toronto has a hard time filling their football stadium. We saw the perfect example. You referred to it as a perfect storm. And there was also the rave going on. There's so much. There were, and I don't think I'm lying, Aaron. If you count the Sky Dome, so we're talking about I'm going to say about 50 or 60,000 people watching three events. And it would be nice if half of those were at the football game, but they were elsewhere. And a lot going on in Toronto, and even at the very same time. I mean, how many towns, cities in Canada can suggest that Lady Gaga is playing while Drake is doing a festival, not just a concert, it was a festival in the real sense of the word, and of course, they had the rave going on as well. So, and then the Argo game. So it highlighted the big challenge that the Canadian Football League has.
Now, it's unfortunately it's not going to get any better either. There is a reprieve for Argonauts and Hamilton fans on Friday, August 12th, because the game is in Hamilton. However, Week 11's game will see Calgary at Toronto on Saturday the
During the
20th
X.
in the middle of the exhibition at 7 o'clock, followed by Friday, August 26th, which we'll be missing this show for, Frank. It will be Hamilton versus Toronto, again at 7:30 on the Friday of the exhibition. So,
Absolutely.
whew, a lot going on.
It's tough, man. It's tough to sell the Argos under those circumstances. Another piece of news we should talk about is the fact that the BC owner called out MLSC and Larry Tannenbaum in particular, suggesting that, maybe he should look in the mirror, and that might be the problem with the Toronto Argonauts. This coming from an owner who is walking the talk. He's not just blowing off steam. He did some great things, and this is what the Argos have to do. They have to work hard for their fans to show up at games. It is what it is. You don't have to do it when you own the Leafs. You don't have to do it even when you own the Raptors. In fact, you probably don't have to do it that bad when you own Toronto FC. But with all those other teams, they can bring stars in because they can pay them. In the CFL, you can't. And that's probably one of the biggest problems where, you know, I mentioned about the new kid, Nathan Rourke. It'd be great if he stayed in our league, but it's going to be hard for him to stay in the league because if he's as good as he's been, the NFL is going to take a serious look at him and offer him a payday. And whether he plays or not, it's not the issue. It's the payday that if he didn't turn it down, Aaron, I wouldn't blame him.
The fact is the CFL is extremely limited by their cap, and there's really no two ways around it. The unfortunate thing is when we do get talent, it's very hard to retain, just based on the very simple fact that, as much as we'd like to say the money's there, quite frankly, based on attendance and ticket sales, it's not. And this league is almost entirely gate driven. So
Absolutely.
that's, a major issue that we run into here.
Speaking of Nathan Rourke, his British Columbia Lions beat the Edmonton Elks. Even a name change wouldn't have helped him in this one, 46-14.
Yeah, that was a bit of a butt kicking on the end of it. Now, I mean, it wasn't bad. They kept it close, at least for the first bit of the first quarter. They were down, unfortunately, after that. The Elk 14-7 make that 37-7 by the half. And BC just kind of put it into coast mode and only put up 9 points in the remaining half of the game. But by then, the damage was already done, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
And it's a sputtering offense, and I have no reason to. I don't understand why, because they have the tools there to put up points. They just haven't been able to.
I think, Aaron, the criticism that's out there, and some people are saying it louder than others, is that Chris Jones is not giving this team a chance to get to know each other. Too many changes, too often, too quickly, back to back to back changes. There needs to be a little more continuity and patience. And right now, Chris Jones is not the patient type of guy. At least he's not showing to be. He might have to develop a little patience and, bring players in and basically give them a chance to succeed. And sometimes, as does happen with new teams, and this is a new team that, basically has a lot to do to improve. Remember, folks, they and the BC Lions were side by each in the standings last year. So we know you can improve. The BC Lions proved that. But really, it's tough. The Lions win this game 46-14, as I said. Calgary beat Ottawa 17-3. Ottawa difficulty scoring.
Oh, and again, the hope was for Ottawa to continue their momentum from their record, well, not record breaking, but certainly win over the Argonauts last week. But that unfortunately
still bothering you.
Oh, it still bothers me, man, and it's so frustrating.
I can see it in your voice. I can hear it.
There was a father behind us who was explaining to his son, "No, we don't call them trap games because Daddy doesn't believe in those."
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So here you go in Major League Baseball. The Toronto Blue Jays having a little bit of difficulty with the Twins, but they come up in the 10th inning to win their game last night.
This was a bit of a controversial call. Kevin Biggio hit a sac fly in the 10th inning. Whit Merrifield came around to score. Now, he was originally called out at the plate, but the Jays appealed, and on review, the call was reversed because it was determined that Twins catcher Gary Sanchez was deemed to have interfered with Merrifield because he blocked the plate. Now, this is one of those calls that doesn't often get made, but when interviewed after the game, Merrifield said, "Look, I was going to go for that anyways and drive the plate. If the call gets made, the call gets made. If it doesn't, we can still find a way to win."
Well, in the good old days, if that was Pete Rose, he'd go right through the catcher.
Yep, exactly. Drop the shoulder and just keep going.
Ball and everything would leave the home plate.
Yep.
Hockey Canada has some news for us. It comes from the board chair.
Yeah, so Michael Brindamore has stepped down as the board chair of Hockey Canada. This is one of those ongoing situations where I would prefer not to have to talk about them anymore. But unfortunately, they are still in the news because they still haven't corrected the issues that got them in the news in the first place. But according to Michael, he said, "I've listened carefully and intently to the comments of Canadians about the culture of our sport and our organization and about our actions and leadership. I understand the actions we have taken in recent weeks are part of the solution. My final term ends in November. I know there's no need to wait for a new era. Immediate action is essential to address the important challenges facing our organizations and our sport, which our action plan works to accomplishment. I would not be able to see this renewal through." Now, there are these changes that are going on here. I think they're in hopes of Hockey Canada making enough of an impression that they can get the federal taps to open again, because that's a valuable source of funding that has been cut off for them, and especially with the juniors coming up.
And sorry to interrupt you, Aaron, and the sponsors, not just the government.
This is true. TD, Tim Hortons, Bauer have all said that they're not going to fund them until this is resolved. So by stepping back, they're hoping that this will signal change for them. And again, like I mentioned, with the juniors coming up shortly, this is another opportunity for them to try to get back on good stand.
Aaron, unfortunately, this does not look good on Hockey Canada. Now, here's why I think it doesn't look good to them or on them. They waited till everybody told them to get lost to do it. They
Mhm.
should have been in front of this, but they were really behind it. And by behind it, I don't mean in support of it. They were as far as the caboose is in a train. They were at the end of this train. They should have been in the front when this all happened. They should have all done what needed to be done and not wait to this extent where really they've lost a lot of face because a lot of companies made a lot of decisions along with the government. Those decisions now will not be easily, you know, they can't, they're going to have to work two, three, four, five, 10 times as hard to convince everybody that they're serious because of the lack of seriousness that they showed. So shame on them for taking this long. Yeah, all right. The board chair steps down. Should have happened a long time ago. Here's
Yeah.
another issue with hockey, and this is sometimes the situation we always talk about in hockey, where we have violence in hockey. This one here, we both have experience in being in a beer league, whether it's lacrosse, hockey, or any other sport. You know, we're not playing for money, but it seems at times you'd think that somebody was trying out for an NHL team, and we had one of those moments here. Please describe for us. The incident is horrifying, and jail time should be in the offing, in my opinion.
Now, this happened, ironically enough, in the Adult Safe Hockey League in Burnaby, BC. Uh, it happened on July 29th. The RCMP were informed of this incident approximately 4 days after it happened. Um, as sometimes happens in beer leagues games, things got heated. People took liberties, and unfortunately, there was a player who was down, no longer wearing a helmet and a face shield, and he was being pulled away from this scrum. Now, while he was being pulled away, a second player, also being held by a referee, kicked him in the face. So
With
this is,
skate,
yeah,
with skate.
it medical treatment was required. The offending player was immediately issued a match penalty, ejected from the game, and has been suspended indefinitely while supplemental discipline is considered by the league. And now, the thing is, this is something that the AHL has been doing for years. There are about 65 to 70,000 participants strong. Incidents like this are incredibly rare and few and far between. We want everybody to understand that the actions being taken here um, are AHL's best response to this sort of thing. And they're very harsh when it comes to that sort of thing. I had teammates that got suspended for far less. So they're guaranteed they'll be taking this very seriously. And
Bye
the footage
bye,
has been passed to the RCMP. So,
bye moment, and maybe some time in jail because, well, I don't
that's
think we
assault.
the act itself is just horrifying. It's just unbelievable, and hopefully, whatever the injury was, I hope it's fully recoverable for the person who was hit. And here's the thing: not you don't blame the victim, Aaron. We don't like to do that, but
No,
we do wonder about how to what extent people take actions that they shouldn't. In other words, maybe just not this person who did the kicking should be removed. As I think, just because the person was kicked, if they did something that the league doesn't appreciate, like you said, people have been ejected for less, right? So what this person did could have risen to that, and others on the ice. So hopefully they'll do whatever it takes to ensure that when we go to play recreation hockey, because most of us are adult and should be old enough to know better, to be able to go out there and have fun and not worry about stuff like this. This is tantamount to road rage, essentially. I attribute it to the same mentality with road rage. No
but
room.
again, it's supposed to be a safe hockey league. You shouldn't be doing that.
Absolutely.
So,
Non-contact. When they say safe, they mean non-contact.
yeah, because everybody's got to work on the Monday, man. Like, come on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this guy shouldn't be a part of that league ever again.
Nope.
And that should be the lesson that he or she, we didn't discuss what the sex was, but I'm assuming. Anyway, let's talk about the Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers signed forward Tyler Benson to a 1-year extension.
So this is a player that played 29 games with the Oilers last season. He scored his first goal on February 20th against the Wild. His extension is league minimum, so $750,000. He also had 4 goals and 8 assists in 18 games for the Bakersfield Condors. So this is a depth player that they signed. He's a 6-foot, 190-pounder. So we'll see where he goes from there. But this is good for them to lock up a little bit of depth.
Absolutely. Jets signed forward Mason Appleton to a 3-year contract.
Now, Appleton came over late last year. His 3-year contract is an average $2.16 million. The Jets traded for him with the Kraken in March of 2022. He was claimed by the expansion draft. He had 21 points and 30 penalty minutes in 68 games for the Jets and the Kraken last season. And again, this is one of those depth signings, but he's also a fan favorite because of the way that he plays and because he's a depth player.
Earlier in her career and in her life, Olivia Newton-John fought breast cancer and won, but she has died at the age 73. Aaron, this is late news. I forgot to mention to you that we would talk about this, but I don't know if you heard about it.
Yes, she actually passed away at her ranch in Southern California this morning. She was with friends and family at the time. John Easterling, her husband, said that Olivia's been a symbol of triumphs and hopes for over 30 years, sharing her journey with breast cancer. She definitely will be missed. Also, her co-star John Travolta put out a very well thought out and poignant statement as well.
Yeah, so. Very sad, very sad. Roger E. Mosley, Magnum PI star who became an influential LA track coach, dies at 83.
If most of you who watch the show will remember him as TC, that was Magnum's chopper pilot. He passed away on Sunday at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center from injuries he sustained in a car crash from last Thursday in Linwood. His daughter Shea Mosley told the LA Times.
He was 83?
He was 83, yep.
Wow. He looked good at that time. That would have meant he was already in his 60, 65 when he was doing that show.
Well, that was 50 years ago, so he would have been 30.
Oh, 50. Has it been that long since he did that show?
Oh, Magnum was the 80s, my brother.
Whoa!
That was 40 years ago.
Whoa! Oh, man, I'm old. Holy crap. Unbelievable. So that mustache really goes, from that to Friends. And I'm talking about Magnum himself. Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, he was always fun to watch. He was as an actor, he was a real laid back guy, and a lot of times he was asked to do things he didn't want to do, which I found always amusing on the show. But he was a loyal friend, as they all were in the program. Let's talk about travel. More than half of Pearson flights still delayed. No timeline for normal operations, apparently.
Yeah, unfortunately, only 44% of flights were on time over the last week. However, that is an improvement from the average of 35% of flights on time over the past month. So they are still working to improve on that. Pearson is continuing to work to expand capacity to make sure that everything else is on time. There is unfortunately no timeline for this sort of thing as to when it'll actually be resolved.
Real quick, we got a minute, Aaron. Can electric car batteries be recycled?
Well, just like a mobile phone, electrical vehicles have lithium-ion batteries. The problem is they're a danger to the environment. So, recycling them is important, but the problem is it's not cheap, it's not efficient, and it's not quick. So the answer is yes, but.
The answer is Thanks, Aaron, for this. Fantastic.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Aaron. For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, Aaron, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.